a dream that one day this nation will rise up.
In this special episode of the Omega Podcast, we have the founder and CEO of Culture Collective discussing with our founder on AI in the music industry, paving a path for success and succeeding amidst difficult obstacles. This episode contains explicit content and subject matter.
Welcome to the Omega Podcast with Jonathan Azu, founder and CEO of Culture Collective, adjunct faculty at the University of Southern California, as well as a board of trustee member of Drake University. It is such an honor and pleasure to have you on the podcast, Jonathan.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on today.
I am electrified by your accomplishments, and I know our audience are super excited to learn more about you, your accomplishments, as well as the trajectory as to where you see yourself in the next few years or so. But before we can dive deeper into you, I know many of our listeners are excited to learn about Culture Collective, a business that you've started and established. Can you share your business initiative and why it was launched?
Well, listen, one thing I will say is I still don't know what I want to do when I get older. So I'm still trying to figure it out. So I think we'll start there. Culture Collective is a company that I started 5 years ago. I'm a long-time entertainment executive. I've spent over a couple decades in the business from various aspects of it too, not just talent representation or working with brands. My career started in media, working in radio, but I like to say that my career actually started at Drake University, which was my alma mater, where I was a talent buyer. I used to book all the shows to come to the university, and that's where I really got the bug to be in the entertainment business. And then that led me into media, and then eventually live events, and then landing me right in the square middle of talent representation. So Culture Collective is a company that is a service-based business. We work with artists to develop the blueprint and roadmap for their careers and help execute against that. It's a very high-level way of saying we represent talent on their tours, releasing music, film and television, literary. If whatever they're up to, we're next to it and help them to lay out the strategy for it. And then we're putting the building blocks together for how it gets done. And also, very importantly, who they work with to get it done. We do focus on artists of color. That's something that I really sought to be specific about and loud and proud about when starting the company 5 years ago. This was in the pre-George Floyd era of the world. I thought it was very important as a person of color to be out there and be visible, that you can do the same thing. You can go and be an entrepreneur. You can look across the table from a client that looks like you, and they can look at somebody that looks like them. And you both are the principals of your own world. I'm somebody that's been lucky to navigate the industry and find myself in very high level places. But prior to starting my company, I began to notice I was always the only person of color sitting at that table, and that's really what drove me to start Culture Collective. Outside of Culture Collective, I'm involved in a lot of other things, as you just mentioned. I'm an adjunct at USC. I serve on the board of trustees at Drake University. I'm also a partner in a brand consultancy agency where we've worked with a lot of amazing companies, including American Express, Ford, as well as others. Recently started working with John Baptiste and helping to advise, consult, and work with him on his company, JBI, as he builds out his own ecosystem of businesses around what he does in his art.
That's fantastic. And for those that are listening, John Baptiste was just at the Super Bowl performing our national anthem. So that's an incredible platform to have one of your artists be part of. What would you say is an advantage for artists, entertainers that are looking to partner with Culture Collective? What particular offerings does your organization have for them?
That's a great question. I think you have to unpack it in a couple of different ways. If you take away the why behind we're in business, and I like to say that we are in it for reasons bigger than music, you look at the service side of artist representation and really having vision with that artist and helping to provide them with the ability to be able to get to those goals with the tools that can get them there and the best, biggest, most efficient, and way with longevity, which is the hardest thing in the entertainment business is longevity. there's a lot of moments, not careers, in the business. That being said, I think that we are, as a company, best positioned to do that because of the dynamic background that myself and the team bring to the table. We haven't been representing artists for 20 something years. We've been in the entertainment business for 20 something years, and we've lived in all these different facets of the entertainment industry. So that allows us to sit at an intersection where we can lean on our experience around media, can lean around our experience around touring. We have a deep experience in festivals, and we work with a lot of brands. We build brands. We help build brands, and artists are brands. So there's a lot of commonality sitting at that intersection for us that we can offer to an artist to be very competitive in the service-based business. And then I think there's the X factor, right? The ability to be able to really connect with somebody that looks like you, which is something that, as I think you can recognize as somebody of color. If you know, you know. At the end of the day, and there's nothing, again, says in the beginning, doesn't mean that we shouldn't work with others. We're not exclusive, we're inclusive, but just the ability to be able to look across the table and see somebody that looks like you is just different, and the reality is there's not a lot of companies that have that offering in the entertainment business, flat out, not just in music, but flat out. So I would never say that's a competitive advantage. But again, it is a kind of a reason why we do this.
That's incredible. And I really appreciate your mission to really recognize the talent of individuals and what they have to bring to the table. But more importantly, the representation of it all, because this is Black History Month, and we're recognizing the significant milestones of Black artists, Black talent. But when it comes to identifying talent, that can be quite challenging because there's so much competition, especially in the LA area. Can you share, what specific qualities do you seek when scouting for talented artists or collaborating with them?
I've been blessed to work with most of the talent that I've worked with in my career. I've worked with for years. In some cases, I'm approaching 10 years working with some of the talent. And I think that to me, yes, there's the elements of are they talented enough to see a career, not a moment in the business? Yes, that's a huge factor and something that we don't take lightly. But one of the biggest things I look for is just the mindset to be able to want to do this business, to want to go through the ups and downs, the lefts and the rights. And it's just, it's a very hard industry to build a career in. It's an easy industry to have a moment in. I keep on going back to that. But to build careers is very, very difficult. And, therefore, you have to have the right mindset to want to go through that. And that includes within that mindset, patience, because it can take some time for the play to develop, and you have to run your race or swim your race is better way to put it. You can't really think about who's in the lanes next to you. You just got to lean on what God put you on this earth for, the capabilities that you have, the talents that you have, and trust the team around you to really see that through. When you don't have that, that's when it gets challenging. Patience and expectations are probably the two biggest things within the mindsets. I spoke to patience already, but on the expectation side, if you have unrealistic expectations based upon the industry, and I'm not saying you don't reach for the top. I believe in reaching for the top, not for the middle, but the expectations have to be there. Otherwise, we can't figure out how to win the game if the expectations are off.
That's very well said. If the expectations are off, then that really is going to impact your entire team's alignment with reaching those missions, those goals that you've set into motion. And just talking from a management consulting perspective, there's definitely a lot of alignment in our sectors just because you want to make sure your team is aligned to the same mission and vision. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you're providing the necessary steps to get there. And I know for sure there's a lot of disruption in both sectors, especially with the discussion of AI. And recently there was a strike with a lot of artists that were concerned about AI being utilized in the music industry. And there's been a lot of considerable discussions about that. Do you believe this technology will influence the music or entertainment sector? If so, in what ways?
It already is influencing the music sector. You can't fight gravity. Ultimately, and you have to embrace emerging technologies and figure out a way in which they can work within your business model, not destroy your business model. And I think the industry, there was in the mid 2000s, there's a technology called Napster. Most people know about that. And it was a file sharing software system. And the recorded music industry didn't see it as a threat. They saw it as an annoyance. Okay. Didn't necessarily see it as a threat. It was shut down, but then you saw other people build business models utilizing the same, I want to say the same technology, but the same methodology. And it disrupted the music industry in multiple ways, including the ability for people to be able to now invest fractionally into a song. When I say fractionally, I'm talking about streaming a song and the artist collecting fractions of a penny versus the ability to be able to sell them a full product. I'm selling you the song or licensing you the song or the album. And that really disrupted the industry, big picture. And now you have AI, which is a probably even a more aggressive technology in the terms of disruption, but it's such a powerful tool that the recording industry is recognizing it. And I wouldn't. Yes, it's a threat in many ways. It's definitely a threat to the IP side, especially on the publishing world. It's very concerning. But instead of looking at it as a threat, you have to look at it as how can this emerging technology be embraced and integrated into our business models to make it work for us. And then the other part, and I do as a part of my ecosystem of things I'm involved in. I'm also a governor of the Los Angeles chapter of the Recording Academy, and the Recording Academy specifically is doing a lot of work in Washington D.C. to lobby on behalf of creatives to make sure that legislation and our elected officials understand how this works, because it's complicated. So in the halls of Congress, there's a lot of really, really hard work happening to make sure that we're protecting us as creators.
Absolutely. Protection, there's a lot of discussions on AI governance. My team, we just came out with an article at our AI company. It's called Omega Helix, and we came out about AI governance and the different legislation around the globe that's coming into fruition that a lot of companies that are in the AI sector are going to have to start to abide by. So definitely a detailed conversation that we can pull out, but just due to time, I want to make sure that we give our audience the opportunity to just hear more about you, because you have such an incredible career. I mean, I had the opportunity of hearing a bit about your testimony at the event last summer here in Boston, and it would be great for our audience to hear about, your motivation for pursuing a career in music and entertainment.
Yeah, my motivation is to always follow your passions. I have a really interesting personal life background, and now that I'm older, I look back at it now, and I look at it as unique and special, more unique and special than when you're living it during that time. But in short, the son of Charles and Gail Azu, a couple that met in the United States and moved to Africa. My father's Nigerian. My mother is from New Orleans, so I'm a Creole Nigerian at the core of me. And my father was adopted by missionaries and brought to the United States and became a surgeon. And when he moved his family back to Nigeria, there was a civil war called the Biafran War that my father was a doctor in, and helped run a hospital that he co-founded, and was one of the only hospitals within 50 kilometers of it during a civil war. So it was, I don't know a lot of this personal stories from back then, but I know it was a very challenging, traumatic, hard time for the country and therefore my family. We found ourselves back in the United States, and my father decided to move us to St. Louis, Missouri, which is where I grew up, because he attended medical school there, therefore had a lot of relationships in the city. But he chose to work in East St. Louis, Missouri, my whole entire life, working with the underserved community there. And looking back, I believe that is where I started to really build my internal barometer around extending a helping hand, especially for those of color. I'll fast forward into growing up in the dinner room table being all about math and science, and that was just the focus of what we would discuss as a family, but it not really being my passion point. It was the passion point of my older sister, my older brother, and my twin sister, all of which are in some sort of type of field of math and science. My twin sister's a surgeon, okay? I went on to college, really a little bit lost into what I wanted to do. I initially thought I would be pursuing athletics in math and science. The athletics thing didn't pan out, ended up blowing out my knee. I used to play football. And then on the math and science side, I was heavily encouraged by my teachers to no longer pursue it academically. Wasn't making the grades, let's just say. But I was always intrigued by just marketing and PR and the social side of that. I was a very social young man in college, and I had a advisor that recognized that and said, maybe you should really think about going into marketing and promotions. And at that same time is when I had taken a trip out to University of Iowa, which is about an hour and a half away from my school, and I went to a concert with some friends just on a Saturday night. Went to go see George Clinton in the Parliament Funkadelic. And it blew my mind. It was such an amazing experience. I remember like it was yesterday. And it wasn't just about the concert. It was the experience of hearing he was coming to town, who's going to drive the car, how are we going to get there, who's going to buy tickets. And I always found myself to be that ringleader that would organize people for experiences. And we got in the car, we drove to Coralville, we pulled up. I remember seeing Black people, white people, old, young, all going into this festival grounds to experience this live event. And it blew my mind. And I remember telling everybody what I was with that day, we should bring George Clinton to Drake University for a show. And they all thought I was crazy. I snuck backstage that night and I met the producers of the show. And fast forward, a lot of things happened between then and April of the next year. But I ended up producing my first concert for my college, which was George Clinton, with those producers. I partnered with them, and I that was the start of my music career, was producing shows. And then I went on in college. I produced a lot of other amazing shows. Graduated from Drake University, thinking, okay, who wouldn't hire Jonathan Azu? Look at this resume. It's incredible. He's worked with all these artists. He's defied the odds. He's a dynamic kid. Found myself in New York, which is where I wanted to live, sleeping on the couch of my parents' friend from Nigeria. I lasted about 2.5 weeks, ran out of money, found myself back in St. Louis, working for AT&T, selling cell phones at the mall. This is not exactly the music industry, as you could tell.
Enjoying your Omega podcast experience? We want to hear from you. Leave us a comment or visit our website at omegaconsulting.online for more insights, success stories, resources, and more. Digitized for excellence.
Through an internship that I'd had over the summer with Live Nation, they got me in contact with CBS Radio. And I never thought radio was a place that would lead me into working with artists. But the local radio station was looking for a early marketing coordinator to come in and do things such as put the prize boxes together for station remotes and drive the radio station van. So nothing screamed talent representation as it relates to that job, but I had nothing else going on. I went ahead and said, you know what, why not? Let's do it. And I started working in radio locally in St. Louis, and I began to notice of all the artists that would come by the radio station for visits while I was there. And I was like, wow, radio really is in the music business. All these artists are coming by when they're coming into town to do concerts. Maybe there's something here. And I ended up recognizing that radio maybe could get me to New York. And at that time, CBS was building out their executive team. I had a friend that lived in New York and worked in the accounting department for CBS Radio corporately, which owned the station that I worked for, one of 184 radio stations. And she had said that there was a guy named David Goodman who means so much to me. David Goodman at that time was president of marketing for CBS Radio. He worked for John Sykes. John Sykes was the chairman of CBS Radio. John was one of the founding fathers of MTV. He was a marketing executive at MTV 1.0 when it first launched, and still a legend in the industry. I saw them hiring all these music executives to work corporately at CBS Radio. And she said, I met David. He's a great guy. He's from Indiana. If you ever find yourself in New York, I can try to introduce you. Maybe you come by the office and we do a little bit of a roundabout. We have lunch before. I show you the office. If he's there, I try to do an introduction. I invested in myself, bought a ticket, went to New York, had lunch with my friend, Nancy Delfino. And she took me around the office. She introduced me to David Goodman. We sat down. I told him my story. We really connected on the Midwest thing. Whatever months later, he hired me to move to New York to work for him. And that was one of the big tipping points in my career was working corporately for CBS Radio in New York at 1515 Broadway, in the middle of Times Square. And that was my launch. I mean, I met so many people over those years. I did a lot of amazing things. I eventually became vice president of CBS Radio. I worked there for almost 8 years. And And it was an amazing run. During that time, I met a group of guys that had just started a music festival in Tennessee that was making a lot of noise, a lot of waves, and that was the Bonnaroo Music and Arts Festival. They were in year 3 of the festival, and they were a small company. And they were looking for somebody to come on board to help them build out their infrastructure. And I left the corporate world and I went into the sophisticated startup world, joined Superfly, which is the name of the company. And we went on to continue to build Bonnaroo. We started a festival in San Francisco called Outside Lands Music and Arts Festival. And then eventually went on to create a bunch of other amazing in real life festival businesses. And while there, one of our investing partners, he invested in the festivals with us, not in Superfly, is a gentleman by the name of Corin Capshaw, who's probably, I would say, next to David Goodman, the next most important pivotal executive that helped me with my career. Corin is founder and chairman of Red Light Management, which is the biggest talent representation, independently owned talent rep firm in the world. At that time, they worked with just under 100 artists, and it was everyone from Marshmello to Lionel Richie, Alabama Shakes, a lot of amazing artists. But most importantly, their first artist was Dave Matthews. And ironically enough, I didn't tell you, when I was in college, my senior year, I booked Dave Matthews. So here's a full circle moment where the band that I booked when I was in college, I'm now being offered to come into Red Light as general manager to help them build their business. And Dave Matthews is still a client there, and I'm working for the guy that helped build out their career. And I jumped at that opportunity. I went to work with Corin as general manager at Red Light for many years, and then again I came up with the vision of starting Culture Collective, work with artists of color, and I wanted to do it on my own. Everyone was super supportive. I thought it was important that I do it on my own, but all that to say is that I followed my passion. I turned a passion into a career, and that wasn't easy. So I think that's the biggest. It's a long-winded takeaway of grew up in a family around medicine and science, but I chose to follow my passions and put my faith in God and really push myself forward and put myself out there and invest in myself and tell my story to get to where I was at. Didn't happen overnight. No different than building careers is harder than building moments. It's the same things for us as executives. If you really believe in something that you're doing, it's going to take time, and you're going to have to dedicate yourself. You're going to have the right mindset. And if you keep pushing and doing the right things, success will come.
Absolutely. Success will come. And I know throughout that entire journey, there was definitely roadblocks. As you shared, you were sleeping on on a couch, and, you ran out of money, and then you had to kind of figure it out. And so many entrepreneurs can relate to that same experience of feeling as if that you hit a roadblock, and where do you go from here? And I already know part of your story because I heard it prior, but for our listeners, you are a cancer survivor. Could you discuss just a little bit about that journey, and how has that shaped you into a better leader, a better father, and husband?
Yeah, great question. I think life interruptions, I call them, where you don't really expect that they're going to come into your life. In this particular case, I actually, cancer's been something that's, like many families, it's been around me for a long time. My father, unfortunately, had metastatic prostate cancer. He was diagnosed when I was in my late teens, early 20s, and had just a really tough journey with it, and ultimately passed away from unrelated causes, but indirectly related to his cancer. And his brother, my uncle, also had metastatic prostate cancer and sadly passed away due to a late diagnosis. And I've always felt that, those are pretty traumatic things. I mean, the only way I can explain to someone that's never been with somebody that's going through treatment and going through end of life stage, and you're there with them through that, it's traumatic, especially for a young person trying to unpack that. I turned 40 years old. When you turn 40, there's a lot of things in the health world that they really encourage you to do, to start doing, to check for things such as prostate cancer. But typically, there's certain tests that you do that you hold off doing until you're in your 50s. But because of my family history, because of what I witnessed, I was encouraged by my mother to pursue screening for prostate cancer earlier than maybe you normally would. That's recommended medically. And I went ahead and did that. And ironically enough, the numbers came back alarming. And so we ran the test again. And a lot of people that don't understand cancer, it's a journey. It's not really a situation where, for the most part, where you walk in and you say, we have challenging numbers, or I'm not feeling well. And the next day they say, you have cancer. There's a whole journey that happens of trying to rule it out of what's going on before you start to pursue options, because those options for the most part are going to be life altering. And those options typically are chemotherapy, radiation, surgery, right? So before you have to go there, you want to rule it out. So I began my journey of ruling out, is this just numbers that are elevated for another reason, or is there something alarming here? And after a long period of time, I got the news that everybody, doesn't want to hear, but you definitely have cancer, prostate cancer, and we need to put a game plan together of how we want to sort through treatment plans for you. And it was, for me, I've never experienced anxiety before, ever in my entire life. I've heard about anxiety. People talked about it. I've never experienced it until that. And in going through playing out my father's journey around prostate cancer, playing out my uncle's journey around prostate cancer, and then thinking of what my journey was going to be. And I was terrified, to be honest with you, because I just witnessed and seen a lot of things that I just didn't want. I just knew what this thing could do if I let it go. And that's an option too. Sometimes people don't want, for multiple reasons, don't want treatment. One of which is it's expensive. And I'm privileged. I'm privileged to have healthcare. I'm privileged to have access. I joke that I have the all access passive healthcare because I know people. But there's a lot of people out there that don't have that, and there's an even greater more amount of people that look like me that don't have it, and therefore they have poor outcomes. But it was a life interruption. It was a tough thing to deal with. It was even harder that I didn't have anybody in my life that I could talk with about it, of what their experience was like, because they were gone. But a lot of friends and family, and I really thank my mother and my wife and my kids for supporting me. But I ended up going into treatment. I had to essentially put pause on my company, which was one of the hardest things that I ever had to do. And really trust my team was going to see me through. I try to be as hard as I could to be a good patient, but even though your body's telling you you can't go, your mind's telling you to go. And they were so supportive to me. And to me, it was one of the most beautiful things that I probably have gone through professionally, because it showed how important teamwork is. And it showed how much people believed in me and cared for me, not because of who I work with or things that I do on the field, if you will, but it was just, they just wanted my health to be great. But, here we are, a few years later, post treatment, and I'm doing really, really well. And all signs are is that we got this thing early enough that it's not going to cause any further challenges. And I remember when my father was sick, my mother always talking about, this is your opportunity to be speaking to my father, it's your opportunity to be an advocate, to go out there and help other people. And I'm just trying to carry that torch forward at the end of the day, because cancer is devastating. And the whole game of cancer is early detection. When you get early detection, you have a sea of options to you of how you can take care of what's going on. If you catch it late, those options get very, very limited, and it gets really, really dangerous. So I'm just a big advocate for early detection, especially in the communities of color that don't have access to healthcare or knowledge around when to get screened and how to get screened. Just a big advocate for that space.
That's incredible. And especially the work that you do in conjunction with City of Hope, and also just your incredible testimony of how you've come from, taking risk ultimately, and just recognizing that when there's times of weakness, to not shy away from, but to embrace it and to accept the process that it might take of getting better. I think many people try to refrain from having difficulties come into their path, or they try their best to alleviate any wrongdoings, but sometimes those difficult moments or seasons are part of the process that you need to go through in order for perhaps someone else to see, hey, you can do this, you can get through this, you can look past your surroundings or your circumstances and actually be healthy, be whole, achieve your dreams and aspirations. So,
and to build on that, I just always try to remember somebody's carrying a bigger cross than you.
Yeah.
I saw that. City of Hope is where I was treated. I still treated there. I'm still a patient there. In my follow-ups, I saw people. I walked the halls next to people that I pray today. I don't know that they were able to leave, but I knew they were carrying a bigger cross than me. Just by what I witnessed, what I saw, what they were going through. It's like that in life. It's like that in business. It's like that in health. It's like that in relationships. So you just have to try to keep that mindset that the best you can is that your situation is never the worst than somebody else.
That's very powerful. And it just comes down to just sympathy, just being able to just sit there, listen to your employees, listen to anyone who's right in front of you, because everyone's story, is intertwined and it matters. And, as we come to a close in recognition of Black History Month, can you share the initiatives you are involved with the Black Music Action Coalition Executive Council?
Yeah, Black Music Action Coalition was started during the George Floyd movement during that time by a group of music executives that, like me, like a lot of the reasons why it started Culture Collective, were recognizing that these issues needed to be fixed. It was an interesting time in life, right, during that time, because it was the pandemic. Our industry was essentially, for the most part, shut down. There was no concerts, there was no live events, there was no television specials. We were sitting at home. We watched the murder of George Floyd on our devices and on our televisions, and the music industry finally looked at itself in the mirror and said, I don't like what I see. And us as executives needed to come together and have a conversation around what are the things that we can do to help really push the industry for change. And the Black Music Action Coalition, started by Prophet, he goes by Prophet, amazing man, was started to help make the industry accountable for diversity and inclusion, and help to make sure that there is I don't want to call it a governing body, but a body of executives that can help make sure that industry is accountable, but also work closely with them on helping to provide them with the tools. So one of the things that BMAC does is they put together an inclusivity report against the industry, and that report is shared publicly with everybody. So we have this tracking tool of how it's going within the industry. And here we are, 2025. You can say whatever you want to say politically, but the reality of it is that diversity and inclusion is being minimized federally. That's a fact. It's not a debate. It's a fact. And when that happens with any federal administration, all ships rise, all ships lower. Okay. There's a massive lowering of the tide as it relates to DEI. And because of that, there is a byproduct that it will happen with other industries, whether or not they think it's right or wrong, because that's the way the sea levels are going. And our industry is at a forefront here, at a crossroads of how we're going to react to that. And it's organizations like BMAC that are going to help make sure that we defy the odds of those tides.
Wow. And I just want to echo everything that was just shared. It's so crucial, And as we reach the conclusion of our conversation, do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share with our listeners?
Final thoughts with your listeners would just be to follow your passions, have a vision in life, trust those around you, but do the things that you need to do to be successful in life and in work. In life, you try to have as best a moral compass as you can. You try to be loving. You try to be empathetic. I have two young boys, 7 and 11. I would probably say the one trait that I hope that they carry through in life is empathy. Empathy is such an important trait. And then on the professional side, that you are challenging yourself and doing the things to make you a better executive, but that includes doing the work. That includes doing, researching things on your own. Not everybody has to go to pursue executive degrees to become talented executives. There's a lot that you can do on your own. There's a lot you can read out there. I'm just another little nugget of another nugget of success that you could pull into your life is when I was coming up and living in New York, my first job. Listen, like anybody in New York, you struggle financially. It's an expensive city, greatly expensive city. I couldn't afford to buy books. So I would go to Barnes and Noble, shout out to Barnes and Noble. I'd go to Barnes and Noble and I would just sit, and I wouldn't even buy a coffee. I would just sit and I'd take all the books and I'd spend all my Saturday reading books and taking notes from those books and then putting them back on the shelf. It was like my library, right? So you just have to think out of the box and really challenge yourself as an executive, how you can push to make sure you do have success. It won't just come to you. You have to figure out how to go get it.
Absolutely. And hey, there are no excuses. If you want it, you got to get it. And thank you again, Jonathan, for just being on the Omega podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Continue the great work that you're doing. I'm glad we sat next to each other at an event.
Yes.
So having a conversation, and here we are, months later on this podcast. So I'm honored to be here, and I'm lucky that chance moment happened.
Amazing. Thank you.
Free